clothed or a trumpeter. She married a man called Salmon, and look at it. Let me get it, and just to point it out to you, right in Matthew 1. Okay. Salmon, in verse 5, Matthew 1, verse 5, was the father of Boaz. Boaz was the father of Obed, because Boaz married Ruth. Remember Ruth of the story with Ruth and Naomi? And Obed was the father of Jesse, who was the father of David. How did Rahab the prostitute get into Jesus' bloodline? Who was this woman? Now, I have come to believe very firmly that this was a woman on a mission. I believe a woman sent from God and put in the land there with a revelation from God to help the people who were to come after her and help to give them a revelation of what God has and to establish them in it. Now, she protected the spies who would come in. And she would give them the word of instruction. Just look at some of these things here in chapter 2 of Joshua. Okay? Of course, she knew that the people of Jericho would be looking for them. And she took them and she hid them, she protected them. But verse 8, I want you to see. Before they lay down, she came up to them upon the roof, and she said unto them, I know that Jehovah, and she used the covenant name of God, Jehovah has given you this land. I know that the terror, the fear of you is fallen upon us, and all the inhabitants of the land faint because of you. I know something about the awesomeness of God, of Jehovah God who works with you. And she said, those of us in this land have heard about the acts of God, how God dried up the waters of the Red Sea, what God did to the two kings on the other side of Jordan, whom you utterly destroyed. And she says at the end of verse 11, as soon as they heard these things, their heart did melt, neither did there remain any more courage in any man, because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and in earth beneath. Where did this woman get this revelation that she could give to the spies correct instruction concerning their mission? She could give them correct instruction from God. She also knew something about herself. No, she hid them so that the men of the land couldn't find them. And you have to study, because when she was trying to get them to escape, she let them down by a scarlet cord from the window. And that scarlet cord stayed in her window to identify her and her house and to protect her and her house, so that when the destruction would come upon Jericho, it wouldn't come upon her house. Through her, her entire household was protected. But she said to the men in verse 6, what verse is this? Yes, verse 16. Again, she gave them this instruction. Now listen, you men, get up to the mountains, lest your pursuers meet you. Hide yourself there for 3 days, and afterwards you may go. Like she's telling them, there is a secret place of protection appointed for you in the mountains. You must go to the mountain of God. And for 3 days, hide yourself. It's the time of your preparation for your mission. You must go hide yourself, and then after, you'll be ready to go to continue your mission. She gave them that instruction. She had a revelation and a conviction that they themselves, the spies, didn't have. They came to spy out the land, and they met a woman who had been put in the land from God to mother them, to instruct them, to bring them into the inheritance. And of course, and she would identify herself as a part of them. She says, you better make a covenant with me and with my entire household. When you destroy the land, you can't touch us. You are now obligated to protect us so that the judgment won't come upon us. What did I say to you this afternoon that I was going to talk to you about? I said I was going to talk to you about the Rahab church. You see, number one, we're in a season where God's using women. Some men have become too uppity and think themselves, God's gift to mankind. And God has to bypass them. And God has an army of women that he has prepared. We are in that season. But you do have to understand something. That God has had some women who are well placed for a mission. Sometime you need to go back to John chapter 4 and read it. And John chapter 4, here is the woman at the well. Jesus is going and he says, I really have to go through Samaria. And this place in Samaria that he went through, this was the place where Abraham first encountered God. This was the place where Abraham first built his altar. This was the place where he met El Elyon, the strong God. And here was another woman that they considered a prostitute. You know why? She now, as Jesus said to her, you've had 5 husbands, and the one you have is not yours now. Right? It sounds like church, eh? By the way, I'm coming to that, because in the scripture, the woman is the church. Here's a woman, here's a church who went through all of the fivefold ministry and figured they didn't meet a need, and now she gone past the fivefold ministry. I think maybe she found a bishop now. That's why Jesus said to her, you have had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not even your own. You're just shacking up with him. And she said, you must be a prophet. And suddenly, the woman became an evangelist. She ran into the city and told them, I met this man. This has got to be the Messiah. You can read the story, and you and I'm hastening on because of time. It's got to be the Messiah. And the whole city came running after her. And eventually they said, yeah, this is the one. And we know that not because you told us, but we have met him. And having met him, yes, he is the one. Well, you know, but they considered her a legal prostitute because, you know, she went through this whole set of men. This sounds like an end-time church. They heard about the fivefold ministry, and, you know, they tried that. But they never learned to submit, and so they've moved on beyond the fivefold ministry to find something else. But still, their need is not met. But God has a plan for their transformation. God has a plan. Well, one of the most powerful books in the New Testament, well, for me, the most powerful book in the New Testament, you'd never believe which one it is. The Gospel of John. I know that Jenny said that's what you give. You give to new Christians. The only reason they tell you that is because they don't have a revelation of it. Now, the Gospel of John was the last book written of all the books in the New Testament. Okay? It was the very last book, written even after the book of Revelations. Remember Jesus, when he was on the cross, what he did? He looked down and he saw his mother. And he called John and he says, behold your mother. In other words, he assigned John to take care of his mother. And from that time, John took Mary and had her in his home. Now, interestingly, they say John is the only one of the apostles who died a normal death, or the original apostles. But from that time, John had Mary, the mother of Jesus, in his house. Now, Mary had followed Jesus all of his life. And she could tell John a lot of things about Jesus that he did not know. And so the book of John becomes an awesome prophetic book. The first chapter of John reviews all of the ministry of Jesus. And chapter 2 begins in a very strong prophetic sense. On the third day, there was a marriage in Canaan of Galilee. But you read chapter 1, and you can't find day 1 and day 2. All right? You can't find it because he now begins to prophesy. The Gospel of John goes beyond the book of Revelations in this prophetic thing. And you find a scene here where there's a marriage in Canaan of Galilee, a uniting of something. And you got to read Ephesians to get a hold of that whole revelation concerning the two becoming one. Ephesians chapter 5, he says, this is a great mystery. This whole thing I'm speaking to you about men loving your wives, it's a great mystery. But he says, really, I'm talking to you about church. And people said, see what? You thought he was talking to you just about issues of regular marriage, and yes, he's talking about that, but more so, he's talking about church when he's talking about men love your wives. Because in church, there is the man, the ministry, and there is the woman. The church is bride. But however, here, in John chapter 2, something has happened. There's a marriage taking place, but they've run out of wine. Now listen. Wine is, new wine is what? It's revelation. They've run out of wine. Revelation is absent from the midst of them. And here comes Mary, the mother of Jesus. And after this point in the Gospel of John, she's no longer called Mary. She is called the woman. The woman. But she has a function to fulfill. She says, whatsoever he says to you, do it. Six empty water pots. Fill them up with water, word. But the old word is not sufficient. That's why the water pots are empty. By the way, you know those 6 empty water pots? Read Hebrews chapter 6. Those foundational doctrines. 6 empty water pots. And most people still have no revelation concerning them. Even those doctrines. And here now Jesus told them, fill it up with water. In other words, let's get back to the word. But in obedience to him, when he said, after full of water, he says, okay, everything's solved. And they began to take the water out, and the governor of the feast, because he was the one who generally tests the wine before it's given out to the rest of the guests. When he tasted the water that had been turned into wine, he says, wow. He says, generally, we give out the best wine first. And when people get drunk, we give them the old stuff. But he says, you have saved the best wine for last. How many of you know you haven't really gotten a hold of the fullness of the Word of God? God has some revelation that's going to blow your ever-living mind. And you'll have to come to the fact that he has saved the best wine for last. But this statement I want you to get hold of there in John chapter 2. And I think it's verse 13. Let's see what verse it is. Sorry, verse 11. This beginning of miracles did Jesus in Canaan of Galilee and manifested his glory. John 2:11. Okay. We have been in the charismatic season and we've operated in the dimension of the gifts. And much of that has dried up. All of the wine's gone from it. And as we said to you, the thing that replaces the charismatic is the glory of God. The third day, there is a marriage in Canaan of Galilee. But the reality is, and by the way, we are living in the third day right now. The reality is, the wine's gone, all the revelation's gone. The beginning of the miracles is not stretching somebody's leg. The beginning of the miracles is not even healing the blind. The beginning of the miracles is concerning the transformation of the word from the old word to the new. Because that's the key to the revelation of the glory of God. The old word being transformed, and you realize, my God, you saved the best for the last. We never knew all that you had in store for us. Eye hath not seen, ear hath not heard, neither entered into the heart of man the things that God has prepared. And by the way, that's why, especially here in the Gospel of John, you have all these Sabbath day miracles. The Sabbath day, the third, or more correctly, the seventh day. The Sabbath day miracles. And every one of the miracles of Jesus are either incurable situations or birth defects. That's the type of miracles. It's not just the healing of a pain in your right toe. It's not a lot of the things that are just the gimmickry. And yet people need, if they have a headache, they need, many times they need an intervention, especially if they have migraine headaches. But all of the miracles of Jesus that you begin to see here take place in the Gospel of John. A type of miracles that cannot be healed by the gifts, no matter how powerful the gifts are. It takes the glory of God to bring them. But what is amazing, a woman initiates the process. Let me say it again. A church, a different type of church, initiates the process of the revelation of the glory. A woman does it. You see, God is on a mission. He's about to take a woman. He's about to take a church and make a church a powerful weapon in his hand beyond anything that you have imagined. I think that's where Psalm 68 fits in. And Psalm 68 is a psalm of restoration. It's a psalm of restoration. But notice what it says in Psalm 68, and you could read it on your own. Verse 11. The Lord gave the word. And here's what the Hebrew says. And great is the army, the company of women who publish it or announce the word. God has a new type of church that's about to be manifested in the earth. Listen to me. Let me say it again. I want you to get it. Church is changing. And God has a new type of word. God gave the word. And there's a whole army. I mean, this woman, you know, she's got on her bridal garment, but she's got army boots on. An army of women, a militant church, not an effeminate, weak church, but a militant church that's about to take the word of the Lord and establish it. And it's so powerful, verse 13, kings of armies did flee. And she that tarried at home divided the spoil. What happens there causes a shift in the governmental level, where the kings of the earth looks and see what's happening in this army of women, these churches, and all they got to do is run for their life because they see something happening. This woman that we're talking about here, this woman is the church. This woman is the church, and it's something awesome that God's doing. I got a few minutes to make the point, or more correctly, to make the application. You see, ultimately, there are two types of birthings that must take place. If you're that church, if you're that woman, there are two types of birthing that has to take place in you and through you. Now, let me read this for you in Isaiah 66, from verse 6 through verse 9. And you're going to have to take that passage and meditate on it a bit. Isaiah 66, verses 6 through 9. A voice of noise from the city, a voice from the temple, a voice of the Lord that rendeth recompense to his enemies. And that verse alone can preach. I don't have time. But a voice beginning to be spoken in the city, in the temple, and it's the voice of the Lord. And the voice of the Lord does something to the enemies. You can find out in other scriptures that the sounding of that voice is with a song. Because a song becomes the weapon that's used. At verse 7, before she travailed, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of the man-child. Interesting. You can study Revelation chapter 12 about the birth of the man-child. Well, the birth of the man-child is before the travail. Verse 8, who hath heard such a thing? Who hath seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Shall a nation be born at once? Something sudden, awesome, and greater than you expect happens suddenly in one day. But it's bigger, it's greater than you expect. But notice the second part. For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. Okay? Two types of birth. Before she travailed, she brings forth a man-child. After she travails, she brings forth her children. And here's God's commitment. Shall I bring to birth and not cause to bring forth, said the Lord? Shall I cause to bring forth and shut the womb, said thy God? In other words, God says, I've been preparing for this thing. I'm not going to stop it. But I do have to read this passage for you, because you have to respond to God. You have to respond to God for this to happen in you. Look in Hosea chapter 13. In Hosea chapter 13, it speaks concerning Ephraim. I'm trying to hurry to get this to a close. You have to come back here in the morning. And it speaks concerning Ephraim. And Ephraim was the tribe where all of the men were destroyed. And only some women were left who could accomplish anything. You can read that in Psalm 78 is one of the passages that you can read that. Also First Chronicles, I think, chapter 7, you can also read about that. But now here's this tribe of Ephraim. Now verse 13, quickly. Hosea 13, verse 13. It says, the King James, the sorrows of a travailing woman shall come upon him. He's an unwise son. He should not stay long in the place of the breaking forth of children. Now I have to read this verse to you from the Message version. They get it. It says, Ephraim was too stupid to come out of the womb. When the passage opened up into life, he didn't show up. One version said the pangs of childbirth came for him, but he's an unwise son. For at this right time, he does not present himself at the opening of the womb. You know, they've told us, yeah, and I know ladies get pregnant and, you know, they're waiting on the baby. And they try to do everything to speed up the process. But it's not the mother who initiates the process of birth. It's the baby. Ask any chicken. The mother doesn't go and crack the egg. The chicken inside the egg cracks the egg. Are you there? The babe in the womb. Something begins to happen. And you know, the babe pulls back in and hides. I'm not going out to that cruel world. I've been here for 19 months. You know, by way of elephants. You know how elephants' gestation period is. I've been here. I've learned how to operate in here. This is a comfortable place. I don't have to do anything for myself. Everything is done for me. I get fed. I don't even have to go to the bathroom for myself.
And that midwife's got to slap my
Yeah, that's a cruel world out there. As soon as you get out there, the first thing they do is slap you upside the backside. I shall not be moved. And you hide in the womb. There is a time for birthing, and only stupid people miss their window of opportunity. Because what good is a baby who stays there and becomes a stillborn rather than being birthed? You see, God has been dealing with a company of people and preparing them for an awesome move of God, for something different. God has also been dealing with the company of young people, and as I was telling you earlier today, a whole awesome company of young people who were born during the wilderness days, the charismatic season. They did not experience that much of God. They heard about the things. But yet God in His sovereignty begun to do something in the midst of their spirit. God has been giving them a revelation, and that's why they're uncomfortable with any old thing. You try to tell them that this is it, and they run from you. They can't receive the old thing because God has put a revelation in their spirit. Okay? The thing is, God's about to bring them into church through a variety of means. And dear Rahab, God has put you in the land ahead of them, giving you a revelation of His purposes, established you so that you can receive them, protect them, envision them, and then release them to fulfill the purposes of God that God has for them. That's what Rahab did. That was her mission. Why God established her in the land ahead of the multitude. Church, you have been in the land ahead of the multitude. God put you there. And people called you all type of names, including a harlot, because they don't know the mind and nation of God. But they come in. They may have come to spy out the land. And all I can say to you, get ready, get ready, get ready. The spies are coming. You'll find out. Even though even though you should know that already, but you'll find out whether I am a prophet or not. Get ready. The spies are coming. Don't look at me so strange. Who do you think Alan is? Hello? Because God put something in his heart and he's looking for something. And to whatsoever means God directed him here. Rahab, you have the revelation. God has prepared you to protect, to envision, to inspire, and if necessary, to release. You're an unknown company, but you are a first fruit company. As I said to you earlier today, God's given you a second opportunity. But they're coming. Others are coming. They looked at other places and they didn't find that thing that responded to what God had deposited in their heart. They didn't find it out there. And they're coming to check you all out to see if you are Rahab, that overflowing place who could remove them from the realm of their spiritual limitations. So then my question is, do you know who you are? And can you rise to your mission? You see, here it is. Your mission is changing. You have spent so many years with your spiritual navel gazing, I mean, you spend so many years trying to perfect one another until you've gotten imperfect. Your focus has to change. God has prepared you for a mission. If Alan comes here and within 3 months doesn't know who he is and the mission God has for him, Rahab, something's awfully wrong with you. And you need to get on the ball. Excuse me, you don't have to wait for Apostle John to come for him to really find his mission. God has already deposited it in you, the word. The Lord gave the word. Great is the army of women who announced it and published it. And you ought to be releasing that word with all authority, with all power, so that those who come, it doesn't take them long to begin to find themselves. God puts you in the land ahead of the multitude for a mission. Some of y'all looking at me strange, in this strange tone of voice. So the function of many of the leaders has got to change. Leaders, listen to me. You don't spend your time ministering to one another anymore. Give attention to them spies who are coming in. You have a word for them. Because you see, the job, the function of the leaders has already begun to change. Some of you leaders are going to be very, 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 very busy because God's changing your function. You'll now begin to be thrust into the marketplace. Many of you, now, and I don't have to say, thus said the Lord, and get a funny tone of voice to prophesy. Many of you, God's about to put into functions in the marketplace, business, politics, and a whole lot of other things. God's about to put you in it. You've done the church thing long enough. It's time for you to do the kingdom thing. Hey Jan, let me approve you. Go for it, girl. Don't slack your riding. Go for it. And look back every once in a while and say, hey Jeff, come on, come on. Because sometimes he's a reluctant soldier. When I say reluctant, equivocating, ambivalent. Yeah, but. Run, girl. Look back and psst. Don't wait for him, Don't wait for him. Go for it. And in case you need it, thus saith the Lord. Businesses are exploding. Opportunities of all types are being put into our hands. And you're going to have to occupy yourself in a lot more than the spiritual navel gazing that you've been doing for many years. You're going to have to focus on others and other things. Because there's a new generation of people coming. Now understand this, that many of the people who are coming have already been prepared for some function in the marketplace. And you're going to have to help them find their role. So you got to get your head screwed on right and your vision correct. You don't major on minors. Well, is his hair too long? Does he play an electric guitar too loud? Foolishness, absolute foolishness. Unnecessary things. Don't major on minors. Know and have clear who you are and your function. The best I could help you tonight is your name is Rahab. But do you realize the whole destiny of Israel in the promised land was contingent on Rahab fulfilling her function? Do you realize that her function established her in the bloodline of Jesus? Do you realize the importance of the role God has given to you? I didn't give it to you. I'm just a messenger. And when Jesus came into Jerusalem, nobody stopped and looked at the donkey and says, oh, what a nice donkey, blessed donkey, hallelujah, we love that donkey. The donkey just brought the message and the messenger. Help yourself, tell the person next to you, my name is Rahab. I wonder why you're learning Arabic. Of course, all you have to do is go back to the conference and listen to the prophecies where God spoke about what he'd be doing there. As though Arabic were the only limitation or the only thing that you're supposed to have already done after all of these years. Hello? Ready or not, the season is upon you. Ready or not, this is the time called now. Ready or not, oh Jesus, help me here. You know, sometimes I get pushed by the Lord. Ready or not, the function and even the job changes. Deb, that was a word for you. You know why? Because God held something secret. Eye hath not seen, ear hath not heard. Neither had it entered into the heart of a man the things that God has already prepared for those who love him. The thing is, you don't know it, but all of you, every single one of you, are some awesome, powerful people in your own dimension that God has called you to. You only get watered down when you don't understand your dimension and you try to function in another dimension. Every single one of you is awesome in the realm that God has for you. And God gets ready to pull back the curtain and reveal you to you and reveal you to the world. Now, I prophesy that in 5 years, you're not going to know yourself. Because a lot of you will be called by different names. A different name will be called upon you. Because you would have been manifest in so many different ways. Not to worry, Alan. God brought you here because he's going to position you. And after he's positioned you right, then you'll be an arrow in the hands of a mighty man. And God has an enemy that you're marked for. Let's change it a bit. A kingdom with your name on it that God has been preparing you for. Don't tell anybody yet. Yes, you do belong to the Middle East. Why, sometimes these women, mess up your life, eh? But so often, the reason why you find some powerful men is because of the woman God puts in their lives. Psst. Now listen to me. I'm prophesying, listen to me. And God takes secret agents and slips them into places to which they have not had access otherwise. Because every day of your life and every stage of your life was pre-planned by God, and God set up the circumstances so that you can fulfill His will. And after, when you see it, you just got to stop and say, awesome God, awesome, awesome God. God, I never thunked it when I got into this marriage. As a matter of fact, Lord, I wondered if this was God. Several times I've wondered if this was God. I've second-guessed myself a few times. But there's something about the sovereignty with which God leads the lives of those He has chosen. You know, He doesn't ask you questions, He just sets you into things and you wonder, how did I get into this? Don't laugh, Michael, because you don't know what got you Jennifer. You think it's because you're handsome little self? No. It's God. It's God. Every single one of us uniquely made by God. But oh, what a season that's about to explode. A multifaceted season. An insignificant group of people suddenly taking on significance and beginning to become who they are, even though they never knew before who they were. But suddenly you begin to find yourself positioned in the right place. Positioned by the hand of God. Suddenly, you become a wheat farmer. There's a reason why we are preparing teams of people. And every place that we do business, we embed in the teams a church planting team. And we tell to the nations, you need what we have? Wonderful. Let's give you the conditions. I don't care what type of belief you have, you need us. When we come in, we establish in our church here. Yep. There it is in the contract. Before we build that unit you want us to build, read your contract, baby. We are kingdom people. Our purpose ultimately is a kingdom purpose. And you'll not separate between the work that we do and who we are. You'll not separate it. In the next 18 to 24 months in this family, you're going to see a whole host of new churches bursting out in a whole lot of countries where there was nothing before. A lot. Because God has suddenly opened up the doors that were shut. A lot of new churches starting, and a lot of churches becoming a part of us because of the season that we're in. Get ready. It's a new season. It's a new day. Well, John, start. You got to start. Yeah, 9 o'clock now, right on time. Now, Father, I thank you for your word. And I declare that your word is not bound. Your word that's gone forth enters into the being of your people and does a shifting in their spirit. And suddenly, my God, answers begin to come in the spirits of your people. And there's a yes. That's the response from the hearts of your people. So, kingdom of God, come. Will of God be done in us just as it is in heaven. We are yours, my God, to command whatsoever you want. That's what we give to you. Yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory.